Everybody to the finale after the finale, the reunion show of Dark Side of the Ring featuring TEW, featuring Dark Side of the Ring. Who knows at this point? Who knows? What we do know is that in our dramatic conclusion, Bret the Hitman Hart united some belts. Where's that at? Newfangled menu, man. I can't find nothing. It's place. There we go. Alright. Yeah. Nice. Let's hope he's not on any drugs, because we're going to drug test all of our wrestlers. Hopefully Taker's not on any drugs. Hopefully Steamboat's not on yeah, that would suck. Yeah, we're going to see here. I think I've got mostly drug-proof champions, other than the tag belts. I think Dynamite might be... Not Dynamite. Gosh, who am I talking about now? Yeah, Dynamite. Never mind. I thought it was Davey Boy. Second guessing. But yeah. We're gonna go to drug testing. Current policy is none. We're not gonna change the policy. But we're gonna comprehensive test everybody for these settings. Let's go. In the spirit of the steroid trial, we're going to see what all of our guys are on. We'll go through those two, and then I'll start the video, watching Vince's steroid trial. And we'll see how all that shakes out. I do have another company that I was running in the other playthrough. Maybe we'll drug test all of them at the end, just to save something fun for the end. So we'll drug test all these guys, and then I'm going to see what kind of booking I can actually do. But it is the 90s, so this one is like 1990. So, whew, yeah, before the real steroid trial, and yeah, we're gonna have some trouble. Oh yeah, I will find new incidents at my decisions screen. That's a fact. Whew. Yo. Okay, it's not that long. Damn, okay. What's Adrian Adonis on? Hard drug user. Rehab. Very unhappy. Uh-oh. Hard drug user. Al Perez, send to rehab. Positive impact. Very happy. Send to rehab. Art Barr, leaving for rehab. Very unhappy about that. Sandy Bar is very unhappy. Bro, you want your kid on drugs? Okay. Hard drug user. Bam Bam Bigelow. This one hurts, buddy. Send to rehab. Positive. Very happy. That's excellent. We loved Bam Bam. We saw his Dark Side of the Ring, and like I said throughout this entire series, I'm trying to be different. I'm trying to book in a way that these guys don't end up having dark sides of the ring, and they end up getting better. So that's what we like to see, Bam Bam. Let's see if we can do the same for Matt Bourne. Send him to rehab. Positive impact. Very happy. Oh shit. Our champion Bret Hart here got an incident. A steroid user. Okay, so there's no rehab option for steroid users. Owned. Gives you a stern warning, Brett. That's bad for you, those steroids. Hard drug user. Brian Pillman is left for rehab. Very happy. No loyalty so far. Fruit, beefcake. Nothing notable. Nothing notable happened in his career. Soft drug user, Buddy Landell. The game treats soft drugs really weird. I would usually not be too worried about a soft drug user, but the fact is it's Buddy Landell, and I can unhappy. Okay, well maybe I don't treat him that way. I don't know. Chris Adams, very unhappy. Kerry Von Erich, very unhappy. I'm gonna have some unhappy folks after this one. Wow, Dark Journey is a hard drug user. Go to rehab. Positive impact. About 50-50 so far. Wonder what my... I actually don't know what my diplomacy skill is. In this playthrough as Jim Cornette, I imagine it's pretty low. Motivation high though. Let's see. Hard drug user, Davey Boy Smith. Not dynamite. Rehab. Very happy. Okay. Dennis Condry's a soft drug user. I also want to send him to rehab. I would never want to send a soft drug user to rehab, let's be real, but like he's Dennis Condry, he's not doing a lot on my roster right now. See, and then, that makes him feel like he's just getting away with something, Bruno, Bravo. Not Bruno. Oh, shit. Steroid user, okay. Deal with that. Hey, man, I mean, Brutus Beefcake is pleased about it. That's about. Steroids. Steroids. Yeah, steroids seems to be a fine in Curse. Steroid user. But you're Hulk Hogan, so we're just gonna, hard drug user. Jake absolutely needs rehab. Hopefully we can get through to him. Yes. Yes. Good shit, Jake. Okay. We'll see if that rids him of all the issues. We love that for Jake Roberts. Okay, steroid user. Jeff Jarrett. Fine. Jim Neidhart. Unhappy. Owen's unhappy. Davey Boy's unhappy. Brett's unhappy. Steroid user. Find. Kevin. Nope. Carrie. Von Erich is going to rehab. Positive impact. Very happy. Kevin is going to rehab. Very happy. We love to see that. Hard drug user Lex Luger is left for rehab. Nothing resulted of that. Luna Vachon leaving for rehab. Arnie Jannetty leaving for rehab. Steroid user. Got some steroid users in the building. Let's keep that fine going. Hard drug user Rick Rude is leaving for rehab. Steroid user Rick Steiner. Fined. No, it's not fine. I said you will be fined. Animal and Hawker upset. They're mad. Yeah, you're gonna be real mad when I send you to rehab, Hawk. Oh, positive. Positive action. Okay. We're good with that. We love rehab for Hawk. We love that. Identified as a steroid user. Ron Simmons? No way. Come on. Come on, Ron. Yeah, he's unhappy about that, isn't he? Sandman's only a soft drug user? The drugs Sandman is on are only soft? Kind of crazy. Let's just check him into rehab just in case. You know what I mean? Just in case. Hard drug user. Scott Hall leaving for rehab. Positive impact. Scott Steiner gets a finer. You know what I'm saying. Shane Douglas. Oh, Sherry Martell, the hard drug user. Yes, yeah. Leave for rehab. Loyalty, Sherry Martell. That is, if I was I was that close to a loyalty. I wish I would have talked to Sting first. Actually, I think Sting's already loyaled me. His fucking ass still left. Yeah. Yeah, he's loyal to me, but he's also loyal to Jarrett. He didn't even leave for Turner or Jarrett. Okay. See what we got. Hard drug user Sting. Go to rehab Sting. Very positive. Very happy. Hammy. Hammy's a hard drug user, that's true. She definitely needs rehab, so let's start that shit up as soon as possible. Terry Gordy, hard drug user. Oh man, we'll send him to rehab. No, we don't have rehab for Terry Gordy. Terry Gordy is on a pay per appearance contract, unfortunately. An ongoing pay per appearance that we bought off of the original UWF when we purchased that company. As a freelancer, Terry Gordy does not want to sign for more than 9 months, but we've been able to have him in our company for 9 years because it was an ongoing contract. So, I think this is also, yeah, written. So we're gonna find him. Well, I didn't see what he said, but okay. Hopefully it has a positive impact. It probably said nothing. Halted. Let's see. Steroids. Boy, go to rehab. Positive impact. Very happy. Steroid user. Warrior gets a fine. Positive impact. Nice. Tom Zenk gets a fine. Tommy Rich goes to rehab. No, he doesn't. He gets a fine. And Vader is the only one on my entire roster abusing painkillers. Rehab. Wow. Okay. 32, 100. Let me. There we go. That makes more sense. Yeah, yep. That's more accurate. Yeah. So we went from having 102 to 83 wrestlers active on our roster. Nice. And look at the morale issues, man. Oh man, the morale issues. Look at all these managers, dude. None of them have clients now. What's happening? Only people with managers do drugs? What's going on? Oh man. Piper's coming in soon. Yeah, he's got 2 days left. So we've got Piper coming, but that's kind of all we have going for us now. Oh no, Chris Adams missed. Look at all the people in the red, dude. Dusty's out for other reasons, but look at all these folks. Oh damn. I kept my champions though. None of the champions went to rehab. A few of them had some steroid problems. We didn't see any problems out of Taker. None out of Dynamite. Did I lose a champ? All gone. Brett has most of the belts. Taker has that one. Steamboat's here. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm good. Sherry, the women's champion is. Yeah, let's just yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see them in 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 3 to 8 months. 3 to 8 months. Nice. Okay. 9 months for Bam Bam. So 3 to 9 months. anywhere in that range, we'll see some folks. Whew. All right, 15 minutes in. Let's get the program going, and we'll see what we can book with what we got left. Honestly, I just kind of eliminated some clutter. A few of those were big guys, but you know.
Through the 80s and into the 90s, on the back of Hulk Hogan's larger-than-life physique, the World Wrestling Federation was a merchandising machine, generating hundreds of millions in revenue.
Hulkamania will live forever!
But then, news broke that the mastermind behind the WWF's unrivaled prosperity was accused of pushing steroids on his wrestlers.
Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation have been indicted on charges of providing steroids to WWF entertainers.
I'm going to do the other company at the end.
They were marketing. We did whatever it took to give what the people wanted to see. We're going to be in a better position and make more money.
And Vince McMahon was aware of it. Everybody was.
The boys need their candy.
Did he ever say, well, I got to put an end to this?
No!
The law changed.
How's the
Prior to
audio,
that time,
Con?
using or possessing
How's the audio?
anabolic steroids was as legal as taking an aspirin.
Authorities sought a high-profile case to make clear they would prosecute steroid users and pushers.
They were a flashing red light to prosecutors wanting to make an example out of things.
It could have taken the whole company down.
If convicted, McMahon faces 8 years in prison and $500,000 in fines.
With 2 trials looming, those involved found themselves tangled in a world of surveillance and paranoia.
I'll turn it down a
You
little.
don't know when you get out of your car, is someone going to come, and then who knows what.
WWF head Vince McMahon faced down a parade of superstar witnesses who held his fate in their hands.
If it was an overt agreement, I can get you steroids. That's Vince McMahon being a drug dealer to his top star.
I wanted to expose it for all it was worth.
The federal government came to take down the pro wrestling business. Little did they know, they had to deal with Jerry McDivitt and Vince
got back from
McMahon,
filming
who promptly
movies.
kicked their ass.
You have no idea what I'm going to do to you. I mean, I am going to crush you like a bug.
Shawn Michaels was not on drugs, y'all. Shawn Michaels was not on drugs. Alert, alert, Shawn Michaels is not on drugs.
This is my office here. This was the headline the day he was indicted up in New York. You can see Vince there. That's me doing the cross-examination of the jury.
I love that. He's got the fucking...
I'm Jerry McDivitt. I'm a lawyer and I've represented the
That's what I'm
WWE
saying.
for approximately 30 years.
Why not, Shawn?
Jerry McDivitt, you are the attorney for the WWE, a very, very famous face lately, I must say.
Ranging from Chris Benoit situation. We're not going to speculate on it here on television and soundbite atmosphere of television. To the unfortunate case of Owen's death.
That's just crazy.
Died last night
All the
in a
red
tragic
names.
accident.
Those 30 years of what you go through in all of those episodes together to try to get to the other side and keep going, that's what forms those kind of bonds. And that's a picture of Vince at my wedding.
Jerry is one of the most intelligent men I've ever met. His intellect is scary. If I found myself into a heinous situations by hook or crook, I needed the best lawyer that money can buy, I would reach out to Jerry McDivitt to save my ass.
He's an
about Mr.
intimidating
Perfect.
figure. He's tall, he's brash and fearless in the way that I saw him in trial, and a valuable figure to Vince McMahon over the years. My name's Wade Keller. I'm the editor of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, and I was on site for the entire Vince McMahon steroid trial. Vincent K. McMahon is obviously the most well-known promoter for the past 35 years.
It's my distinct privilege to present to you
As far as like Vince McMahon's success and everything like that, you take Hulk Hogan out of the picture, Vince McMahon would not be anywhere near as successful. My name is Dave Meltzer, and I'm the editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and I've been writing about wrestling for a lot of years, 49 years, 50 years. Hogan, he was one of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling, and wrestling exploded on his back in the late 80s. He was the all-American hero.
You gotta say your prayers and you gotta eat your vitamins.
At that time, what the fans were responding to were cool-looking guys with these great physiques.
He's still
They
in
were
the
just
ring.
getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was becoming more of a vehicle to sell merchandise than anything else. My name is John Arezzi. I'm a wrestling historian, going back 30 years to my original radio show called Pro Wrestling Spotlight. pro wrestling became more cartoonish with these big monsters that were being given names like the Ultimate Warrior, the Warlord.
He's the biggest two-man. Oh.
And look at the size of these guys. We could have had a football team and nothing would even touch us. My name's Terry Shapinsky. I wrestled in the WWF as the Warlord. I was also one half of the Tag Team Powers of Pain.
God, they're huge.
There are estimates that 90% of the wrestlers in that time period were all on steroids.
In the late 1980s, steroid use was legal if the drugs were prescribed by a personal physician for the treatment of an injury or disease. And WWF wrestlers had unlimited access thanks to a willing accomplice.
Do you know who Dr. George Zahorian is?
Oh, yeah.
Dr. George Zahorian was the ringside physician for the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission. And he was assigned to ringside at all of the wrestling matches in Allentown, Pennsylvania for their TV tapings.
The doctor is right there at his side.
George Zahorian was a fan of the wrestlers, and they put him on the show.
You have some darn good wrestlers coming out here, really getting abused.
As the state's representative, Dr. Zahorian is responsible for examining each wrestler to ensure they are healthy enough to perform.
As he was doing the blood pressure, everything else, after he was done, he always had this big doctor bag. And he would open it up afterwards, and it'd be filled with steroids. And he would say, is there anything you would like? And if it isn't there, I can get it for you, and I can send it to you.
He set up shop every taping, and the guys lined up to purchase their candy.
Valium, Tylenol 3, Percocet, Percodan, Somas, pain pills, steroids. My name is Brian Blair. I'm known as B. Brian Blair, half of the Killer Bees. And we said, Hulkster, you know, we need a little pump on. He said, yeah, man, you could use a little bit more muscle in those wings there. And he said, people do not understand the pressure that you're under. Look the best you can to keep your spot in the business. It was high pressure.
For over a decade, steroids were an open secret in wrestling. In the late 80s, despite athletes being exposed as cheaters,
stripped of his gold medal for testing positive to using anabolic steroids,
steroid abuse was becoming a political lightning rod.
There was a lot of hysteria about steroids back in that era. It always sort of portrayed it that the athletes who were using them were somehow misusing a drug that was made for some other purpose. Steroids is, as far as I can tell, the only drug that was ever made in this country's history for which the drug manufacturers were not required to give dosage, duration, and adverse effects for the purpose it was made, which was athletic enhancement. There's a lot of good, truthful reasons to tell people what damages can be done by taking these drugs that you don't need to lie to them about. Just tell them the truth. But the government never did that. The federal Congress was reacting to some of this hysteria by the Anabolic Control Act in 1990, which made it for the first time a controlled substance.
This means that trafficking in steroids will be treated in much the same manner as trafficking in cocaine or methamphetamines.
With a new law in place to curtail steroid dealing, particularly to teen athletes, the FBI targets weightlifting coach Bill Dunn, who quickly agrees to hand over his supplier, Dr. Zahorian.
Dunn had been, I gather, caught with a large amount of steroids, flipped, became a government witness, agreed to wear a wire. I think they made some controlled purchases with him where they sent him in and had him mic'd up and recorded it.
I want to get a large order, but I need
It's
some,
one rematch for each
tell
of the
me what you
belts.
need because, you know, like I tell you, cash is king. You know, if I have it, you got it, you pay.
He didn't sound like a doctor. He was talking about it, that Dunn was going to give steroids to kids. You're selling steroids to somebody with knowledge that they're going to deliver them to kids. You're not functioning as a doctor.
As authorities build their case against Dr. Zahorian, a federal official mentions the investigation to a colleague who has ties to the WWF. The news reaches the desk of Vince McMahon's wife, Linda, who commands the company distance itself from Dr. Zahorian.
Yeah, the internal memos were, we don't want this guy at our shows anymore, and we need to be really cautious because the landscape has changed right now.
They used that tape of Zahorian to then get a search warrant. On the wall of his office, they still have that famous picture of him standing there with Hulk on one side and Vince on the other side, and thought, oh, what do we have here?
As authorities probe Dr. Zahorian's drug-dealing enterprise, a trail of evidence leads them straight to the doorsteps of WWF wrestlers.
I got a knock on my front door. He introduced himself to me and says he's an FBI agent, and started explaining to me that I had gotten 3 FedEx packages from Dr. Zahorian, and they knew everything that was in the package. They would go right into the mail center. They'd ask for any packages sent out of Dr. Zahorian's office. Then they would open, they would film, so they had all the evidence. It was put back in as if it were not touched. You would open it and never in your wildest dreams think that the FBI was looking at it at the FedEx mail center and had pictures of everything that came to your doorstep. He said, you can come testify, and in exchange, we won't prosecute you. I said, fair enough. I just sat down on my table and I said, wow, I can't believe this is actually happening.
The wrestler said that when they couldn't see Dr. Zahorian personally, he sent them steroids by Federal Express. Records show several Federal Express shipments from Dr. Zahorian to Terry Bollea, better known to his fans as Hulk Hogan.
5 wrestlers are set to testify against Dr. Zahorian, including Hulk Hogan, whose appearance could spell disaster for him, Vince McMahon, and the entire wrestling world. Seeking to avoid the publicity linking him to steroid use, lawyer Jerry McDivitt is enlisted to get Hogan excused from testifying.
Hulk was riding high. He had been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was as big in that time period as Michael Jordan was in basketball. They wanted to have a big high-profile trial at that time to sort of get it out there that the law is different now with respect to steroids. And I think that had a lot to do with why they brought WWE people in. It was pretty obvious that they were going to get a conviction on the 10 counts that involved Bill Dunn. And at the same token, none of the wrestlers had done anything wrong.
The fact that Piper was there and not Hogan at the Zahorian trial is one of these mysteries. It's like, why were some guys forced to go? Why were some guys given a pass?
He was a little bit unique from the other people because Terry had what I regarded to be a doctor-patient relationship with Dr. Zahorian. He had consulted with Dr. Zahorian about various medical issues involving him and his wife and having children. So I decided that I would present an argument to the judge that the government had no compelling reason to do this because it would compromise his medical privacy rights to have to get on a witness stand and explain why he did what he did. And it would just serve to victimize somebody who had not committed any crime.
He was dismissed from testifying because it might be injurious to his career. Well, it should be injurious to his career if he was on drugs, if his whole persona was say your prayers and take your vitamins, kids. My name is Phil Mushnick. I'm a sports columnist with the New York Post. And in the 1980s, I began to write about the drug scandals within the World Wrestling Federation. I think get dismissed from testifying because it might hurt you to tell the truth.
A person in the media called me up and said Ronald Reagan had to testify in Oliver North's case despite his not wanting to testify. How did Hulk Hogan get out of testifying? And I remember my answer was, well, maybe Reagan had the wrong lawyer.
After just 3 hours of deliberation, the jury finds Dr. Zahorian guilty of selling steroids to wrestlers who were not his legitimate patients. But despite the disgraced doctor taking the fall, Vince McMahon and the WWF do not emerge unscathed.
On the last day, the lawyer for Zahorian goes, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan bought their steroids from Zahorian. Now, that's when they both had to go to the media and say something.
Promise that the World Wrestling Federation will be the standard bearer for drug-free sports and entertainment.
Today, Vince McMahon, head of the World Wrestling Federation, held a press conference announcing that the Federation will be enacting a drug testing policy that will include testing for steroids.
At the press conference at the Plaza Hotel in 1991, when Vince announced his steroid policy, by chance or by design, the same night, Hulk Hogan is appearing on Arsenio Hall.
Did you ever discuss with Terry his appearance on Arsenio?
Yes, but I can't tell you what the discussion was because that's privileged.
Your name came up recently when a doctor got himself into trouble.
This is going to be a tough thing because if he goes out on TV and tells the truth, it's like his image is going to be shot.
So basically what I'd like to do is, with all due respect, inform you and everybody else that's misinformed by the newspapers.
So he weaseled his way down to something that sounded less offensive, but still to his mind felt like an admission of something.
You know, on 3 different occasions, I had the same type of muscle injuries. That is the extent of Hulk Hogan's steroid use.
And it's like, I took steroids 3 times back in 1983. I tore my bicep. I used it for rehab. And then it was just like, oh my God. It was just a complete, utter lie.
I'm not a steroid abuser, and I do not use steroids.
Vince did not want Hogan to say what he said. Certainly Vince told me that. You know, he said, I told Hogan to tell the truth, and he didn't tell the complete truth.
If you train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and believe in yourself, just like I have done, brother, you can have everything you want out of life, and I'm not ashamed of anything I've done.
What he said did not pass the public sniff test, and everybody thought, okay, that guy's a liar, he's covering something up.
He's always been a liar.
After Hogan's appearance on Arsenio Hall, McMahon was called to answer for a range of scandalous allegations on the Phil Donahue Show.
This bright audience knows damn well that steroids were used.
I think Vince McMahon didn't like me. Something that happened on the Phil Donahue Show, where I caught him in a lie, basically. I mean, we're on the panel, and I said, Vince, didn't you say in published reports that you were devastated when you found out that Hulk Hogan lied on Arsenio Hall?
I wasn't devastated.
And he looked at me and goes, I never said I was devastated. And Dave Meltzer said, oh, yes, you did. You told me.
That was the word you used to me. It wasn't.
Well, all right.
I'm just sitting here going like, you told me this. I'm not going to sit here and say nothing when that's the exact word you used.
And then he gave me a look like, if looks could kill, I wouldn't be around anymore. The day of the Donahue Show, something really, really scary happened. I had an apartment on Long Island. There was a knock on the door. I wasn't there. My mom, who used to live with me, she opened the door up, and there were 2 gentlemen standing there, and they asked if John Arezzi lived there. And my mom said, yeah, my son lives here. Please tell your son he lives in a dangerous neighborhood. And I was like, what was that all about, you know?
That's sort of part of the problem with these guys. They have vivid imaginations. They say these things, and nobody would care enough about a John Arezzi to send black-suited guys to his house. That's kind of fables that they tell that sort of give themselves an importance that they don't have.
Let them work their differences out in the ring.
And what happened was Phil Mushnick started writing these hit pieces.
And it just seems as though they're all ganging up on us all at one time.
And said he was worse than Hannibal Lecter. You're going to call him something like that?
Thunder
because
Liger back.
people did something that was legal to do when they did it.
McDivitt's tactics going after journalists are, right out of central casting from old courtroom dramas.
He perceived it was wrong that Hulk Hogan had been excused from testifying and called out for, in one of his writings, another federal investigation of the WWE. And the Eastern District prosecutors read that and took up his call for another investigation.
He's flattering me. I had no idea I had this kind of muscle.
And I was actually up at the WWE's headquarters. We got the first of what became 7 or 8 grand jury subpoenas issued from the Eastern District of New York that commenced the investigation. I think it was on April 2nd of 1992. I remember talking about it with Vince, and he asked me to represent them in it. And you just kind of know in this business certain things, the minute you get the subpoena, what the result's going to be. This is not going to be an investigation where they're going to look into something and then say, okay, nothing there. This is a witch hunt.
The grand jury investigation would allow prosecutors to assemble evidence and gather witnesses for an eventual indictment. Under a cloud of suspicion, McMahon and his legal team braced for the inevitable.
They're going to find something to throw at the wall and see if they can get you a plea bargain to something or whatever. So hunker down. For the next 18 months, it was sort of the feeling of being stalked. Because somebody is following you around, looking at everything you do, and that they are eventually going to try to harm you. And there's no limit to how long the government can go on to do that to you. And so when I started teaching myself everything I could learn about steroids, all you can do is prepare for what you know is going to come.
With a grand jury investigation in full swing, the WWF's woes become tabloid fodder.
I was told by McMahon that I was an FBI informant.
Well, I think, you know, they leak various things to the media so the media writes a story that what I call further demonizes the target, builds public support for the prosecution. In exchange, they have inside sources of the investigation and things of that nature. They all, of course, deny it, that any of that stuff goes on, but, you know, it does.
I was an FBI informant. What I wrote, they'd read, and then they acted on it. So I guess I informed them, as well as every other reader of that column. You gotta understand, leading up to that trial, McMahon's not just taking me sitting down. He's got me trailed. He's got a group called Fairfax Partners, former FBI agents, who are looking for anything they can get on me. I actually ran into one of these guys. I found out who he was. He was investigating me. And we're laughing and we're drinking. And we're getting along great. He says to me, listen, I know you're a good guy, but this is my job. I said, that's a lousy job. And I told him, I said, I smoked a lot of pot in college. Go with it. Go with it. Take me down. And he was laughing. He's laughing.
As prosecutors subpoena witnesses, media reports indicate that McMahon's limo driver, James Stewart, is prepared to testify that McMahon ordered him to deliver a shipment of steroids to Hulk Hogan.
Why do you think they didn't call him as a witness in Vince's trial?
Probably because he had brought a lawsuit against WWE for some, I can't even remember what reasons he conjured up. And when I took his deposition, I caught him dead to rights perjuring himself. I don't think you'd want to put on a witness stand somebody who had admitted to committing perjury and other proceedings.
In the midst of the federal investigation, the WWF initiates a dramatic overhaul of the types of physiques it features on television.
Because of the steroid scandal, Vince McMahon couldn't keep Hogan around.
It's like a slap in the Hawkster's face, baby!
Hogan was the star of the show. And had been for years and years and years. But it was coming time that Vince wanted to get younger.
Vince McMahon is probably thinking, do I want a diminished, thinner Hulk Hogan as my centerpiece, advertising to my audience how important steroids were to his look? So Vince McMahon had to shift his focus to smaller wrestlers who were more athletic. Despite
the WWF veering away from excessively muscular body types and Hulk Hogan departing the company, in November of 1993, the hammer finally drops.
We were in New York. We walked in the restaurant. All the news was on. McMahon indicted and whatnot.
The indictment says that McMahon and a doctor conspired to distribute steroids to the wrestlers to enhance their size and muscle development.
Everybody in the restaurant was saying things like, "Go get him, Vinny!" You know, they were cheering for him. We were kind of celebrating that he got indicted because now we get a chance to put an end to this thing. You know, after 18 months of getting bled to death in the media and all the accusations, please, just give me a chance to go in a courtroom and kick their butt, because that's the only way this is going to end.
If convicted, McMahon faces 8 years in prison and $500,000 in fines.
That whole trial was like a circus. There were wrestling fans there. There were newsletter writers there. Vince's family that would show up every day in the courtroom.
Stephanie and Shane, they were not confident, they were scared, and they loved their dad, and they wanted to protect the family empire at that point also.
And then Vince shows up wearing this neck brace, and, you know, everyone is kind of laughing at it.
People are like, you've got to be kidding me. You're actually playing on the jury for sympathy in a neck brace?
Vince McMahon was the babyface to this audience, which was funny to me because it's like cheering for like the guy on trial.
Here we go. It's a wrestling angle.
I know there was a lot of speculation that was for sympathy, and it wasn't. It was very real. He had actually had neck surgery. He knew he was going to have to be at that trial and scheduled it so that he would have that done then, so he wouldn't have to be on TV with a neck brace on. So that's why it was set for that time.
The prosecution team, led by Sean O'Shea, have a lineup of WWF superstar witnesses set to testify, including the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan. Jerry McDivitt's prior representation of Hogan at the Zahorian trial is regarded as a conflict of interest, forcing McMahon's team to bring in reinforcements.
Laura had been a former prosecutor, very well regarded, so I said, this is what we'll do. I will represent WWE, Laura will represent Vince personally, and we'll rely on Laura's cross-examination of Hogan. They couldn't then use my prior representation to knock me out of the case. And that also gave us the advantage of having double openings, double closings, two people doing cross-examinations and whatnot.
They sent me a subpoena, said, we'd like you to be at the trial on this day. The best thing I did was just tell the truth. Vince never came to me face to face and said, Terry, if you don't take steroids, you don't have a job.
Apparently you said on the stand you never bought from Zahorian because his prices were too high.
It's true. His prices were like 4 times what I could get it for.
And it was like emblematic of their case. They had so many people that came in and said, yes, I used steroids. I used steroids before I ever came to the WWE. And I didn't buy them from Dr. Zahorian. And you're left there sitting there scratching your head thinking, why are they even here?
The whole thing to me was just a big witch hunt. They just wanted to go after Vince for something.
Other wrestlers described steroid regimens that they began long before coming to the WWF, but that changed under McMahon's direction when the law shifted in 1990, until one finally delivers what looks like a knockout punch.
I don't think I can drug test him.
When Kevin Wacholtz, the wrestler Nails, gave testimony, his story was that Vince McMahon told him, we need you to get on steroids.
And then we showed the jury a picture of how he performed, which was in this orange outfit that covered his body. So he wasn't a performer like an Ultimate Warrior or somebody whose body you actually saw.
So why McMahon would want him to be on steroids in the midst of a controversy that can hurt his company, and when an outfit wouldn't reveal any muscles, really seems questionable or lacking credibility.
At the end, she was like, do you have any animosity towards Vince McMahon? And he goes, no. And she just goes, he doesn't know what the word animosity means. And then she goes, do you hate Vince McMahon? And he goes, yes.
I think the whole thing is weak. Do you believe that he's essentially innocent? I think he took professional wrestling to a level of success and he made a lot of enemies.
After a string of disappointments for prosecutors, desperate to convince the jury McMahon conspired with Dr. Zahorian, they bring in Zahorian directly from his prison cell to testify against McMahon.
And during his direct examination, Dr. Zahorian kept vaguely referring to some letter he had written, which we didn't have a copy of. Finally, the judge ordered them to turn over any letters that they had received from Dr. Zahorian. And it's all in the midst of the trial, and this document gets turned over while Zahorian's on the witness stand. And so I'm reading it, and I was stunned. Dated May 19th, 1993. Dear Mr. O'Shea, as you know, I recently testified before the federal grand jury. My testimony was required by you pursuant to subpoena, but I nonetheless consented and agreed to cooperate. As a result, I was transported by the federal marshals in handcuffs, waist chains, and leg chains, and detained at various prisons for a period of 44 days under conditions more appropriate for violent, maximum security inmates.
Suspension, Bobby.
They take him for 44 days on this tour of these various solitary confinement and whatnot. He has no idea what's happening to me.
For the record, I never have this many incidents.
Anything.
It's only
He
because
arrives
of the
in the
drugs.
Eastern District of New York, and he's taken into the grand jury without any preparation at all. And they ask him, well, we've been told about some conversation you supposedly had with Vince McMahon about steroids. Can you tell us about that? And his answer was, I don't know what you're talking about. And they take him out of the room. After he's taken out of the room, he's put in these other hellholes in New York, solitary confinement. And I remember reading that to the jury and thinking, like, this is the kind of stuff that gets done in America to get somebody? After that, they bring him back in the grand jury room, and before they do, they tell him, we have this tape recording of you with Bill Dunn. You were indicating that you were willing to sell steroids to kids, which you haven't been charged with yet. And so they've asked the same question.
That shit
did you
was
have
like
a conversation
100,
with Vince?
bro.
And so then all of a sudden, yeah, I did have a conversation with Vince.
While on the stand, Dr. Zahorian recounts a meeting with McMahon where he disclosed that he was selling drugs to his wrestlers, but McMahon never told him to stop.
And that sole conversation then becomes The only basis for charging Vince was having some conspiracy of any kind with Dr. Zahorian. Nothing in that conversation, of course, has anything to do with defrauding the FDA or anything like it.
When questioned by prosecutors, Dr. Zahorian denied his treatment was malicious or influenced his testimony. Pre-trial interactions with witnesses were apparently not only limited to prosecutors. Vince McMahon's personal assistant, Emily Feinberg, had intimate knowledge of his own steroid use and records of financial transactions between McMahon and Zahorian that could shatter his defense.
I remember watching Laura Bavetti cross-examine Emily Feinberg, and it's like, she has ESP. She knows every answer, and she's got her comeback on every answer, like immediately. And I never thought anything about it until that story in the Village Voice came up. Marty Bergman was the secret husband of Laura Bavetti. Her husband was talking to me as like another reporter discussing the trial before the trial.
And he calls me, and he's representing himself as representing 60 Minutes. And I go, yeah. Like, tell me about McMahon. What do you know that you haven't written that we can get into? I said, I don't know. What I know, I've written. And if I knew something else, I'd write it, and I wouldn't tell you. I remember calling my wife's cousin, who's an entertainment lawyer, and I said, I heard from one of 60 Minutes' producers today. And he said, what's the name? He says, well, he's not a producer. That's his brother. He said, he's not a producer? He said, no.
I read that he told Emily Feinberg that he was going to get like book deals and things like this. He was pumping her for info, and Laura's there with every rebuff right there. It's like she knew everything. It was unbelievable.
I knew Marty. He was a good guy. I liked Marty. He was Mr. New York as far as I was concerned. And if there had been anything that he had done that constituted witness tampering, they would have brought it out when she was on the witness stand, and there was nothing like that.
Vince McMahon himself addressed the allegations shortly after they appeared in print.
I wish to state that my heart goes out to my attorney, Laura Bavetti, and her husband, Marty Bergman. These same yellow journalists who had to eat crow for telling lies are once again incestuously joining forces, trying to drum up support for their own personal agenda, trying to manufacture some reason to save face, attempting to perpetuate some theory of witness tampering. Gentlemen, is that the best you can do?
The establishing of venue, a legal requirement that cases are brought in the area where the alleged crimes occurred, becomes a key point in the trial. Although Dr. Zahorian sold steroids in Pennsylvania, the charges against Vince and the WWF were brought by the Eastern District of New York. Prosecutors need to demonstrate that some steroid distribution happened in the Eastern District.
The thing I can't understand is why the government indicted McMahon on Long Island when all the paper trails were right there in his backyard in Stamford, Connecticut. I thought that was folly.
They principally tried to use her to establish venue by suggesting that she had taken some steroids and delivered them to Hulk Hogan through a driver. And so they got her up on the witness stand to say, well, I think they were delivered, Madison Square Garden or Nassau Coliseum and whatnot. So we had to dissect that testimony by showing, okay, here's the date you received the steroids. Here's the agent's reports for when WWE performed at Nassau Coliseum. There's no match between the two. How in the world would you have delivered anything to Hulk Hogan at Nassau Coliseum when he wasn't even there in those dates? So
that was like one of the counts that Vince was being indicted on, and that charge was thrown out. It's like, why was that charge there in the first place?
The witness who could do the most damage would be Hulk Hogan, who had recently signed with McMahon's rival, WCW. Hogan is granted immunity for anything he would reveal on the stand about how he got his steroids from Dr. Zahorian while working for McMahon.
There was no doubt that all of this steroid scandal stuff caused a rift between Hogan and McMahon, and there were expectations that Hogan was going to go in there and kind of bury Vince.
When Hogan came in the courtroom.
Hulk Hogan testifying could seal the deal for the prosecution and send Vince to prison for years. He is the person the prosecution said bought drugs from Vince McMahon.
And what are you gonna do when Hulkamania destroys you?
It was very dramatic. I felt sorry that he was going to get drugged through it again.
Hulk Hogan is finally here. What is he going to say?
I knew what was on the line there, and the problem was that they would put Vince McMahon in jail. They should have put the whole wrestling community in jail. You know, he didn't sell them. He didn't inject people. Like, he didn't do it.
Hogan framed it to the shock of the prosecutors and to people gasping in the courtroom quietly. We were gym buddies. We were friends. Sometimes I had extra steroids, I gave them to Vince. Sometimes Vince had extra steroids, he gave them to me. That doesn't make him a drug dealer.
I mean, he was the big dog, and when he walks in and says, it doesn't have anything to do with a conspiracy, there goes their case.
He kind of just like exonerated Vince for any implication of his involvement at all, which to this day is kind of something you wonder about.
But I was just glad Vince McMahon survived it. Vince didn't go to jail for 17 years because of me.
Having watched it, I felt Hogan's testimony was very beneficial to Vince. Vince didn't see it that way. Vince was furious Hogan testified against him.
Yeah, I think they didn't want any part of each other towards the end. It was kind of like, you go your way, I go my way, and nice knowing you, pal.
McMahon spokesman says Hulk Hogan body slammed the prosecution.
Why didn't you have Vince testify?
I mean, what would he say? There was no evidence against Vince other than that silly conversation I told you that Dr. Zahorian trotted out after he went through his 44 days of traveling through solitary confinement in jails. But there was nothing even about that conversation, even if it occurred, that was incriminating.
Sean O'Shaughnessy's closing argument went from reserved to explosive and bombastic, and it was a flurry of language that painted Vince McMahon in a villainous way.
He goes, you know, has no respect for wrestling? Vince McMahon. It was like an amazing pro wrestling promo.
Corporate drug dealers and all this just horribly inflammatory terms that most judges wouldn't let a prosecutor get away with doing because they don't have anything to do with the facts and they're just trying to prejudice the jury.
And he starts talking about how it was the hundreds of millions of dollars that Vince McMahon made off of these steroids, off of these guys. I mean, he did a great speech.
O'Shea, I think at that point, framed it as you need to take down Vince McMahon because he's treating wrestlers as slabs of meat to make money and gain power and fame. And this was nefarious and intentional, and he knew what he was doing.
I went out in the hall, and Stephanie was out in the hallway. And she was a young girl now. And she was crying. And I always really liked Stephanie. And she was very upset at the things he was saying about her father. And I just remember saying to her, Steph, you haven't heard me yet. Just wait. This case is all sizzle, no steak, all icing, no cake. Whenever we were doing our research and I was plumbing the FDA files, I came across these documents for a drug called Anavar, which is a very powerful steroid. And it was a memo where the FDA was meeting with the manufacturer, telling them that Anavar was not safe for human consumption and that it had to be removed from the market. This drug has been given to many of these men who are coming in here to testify in this case. It demonstrates how inept they were in regulation when your internal memos say that you have determined that Anavar is unfit for human consumption and should be removed from the market, and you know they didn't do that. The jurors passed a note to the judge saying, we want to know whether what Mr. McDivitt is saying is true or not. Did they not remove Anavar from the market? And we go to the sidebar and O'Shea is, don't tell him, Judge, don't tell him. I'm going, tell him the truth, tell him the truth. And so eventually the judge tells him, no, it wasn't removed from the market. I thought at that point, the jury really gets it. They understand the hypocrisy. This whole prosecution, for them to be coming in here saying these men were some part of some plan to defraud the government agency that's supposed to be protecting them, when the government agency that's supposed to be protecting them failed them completely.
When it came down to closing arguments, he really honed in on the idea of the unfairness of the system, but it was part of a theme in his closing argument of the government is coming after this family business over flimsy arguments that you've watched fall apart before your very eyes the last 3 weeks.
You know, maybe I'm an optimist, but I didn't spend 1 minute of my time thinking about losing. When the jury's coming in, you don't only feel your heart, you hear it beating. I could hear Linda's heart beating. She was sitting right next to me. So it's a very intense moment. In the criminal context, there's so much more at stake than money. It's your liberty, it's your life, the survival of the company, it's everything. In federal court, it's in the high 90s percentage of cases that are indicted that are either resolved by a guilty verdict or plea bargain. It's an extremely low percentage, like 2 to 5%, that ever go to trial and where there's an acquittal. And you could probably count on one hand where the defendant is acquitted without calling a single witness. And there's no more, for lack of a better word, ballsy move than not to call a witness. And you know it's one of those strategies that if it's successful and it works, everybody says, oh, what a brilliant lawyer. They didn't even call a witness. But if it doesn't work and they get a conviction, they go, can you believe that idiot? He didn't call a single witness to defend the guy. You know, I mean, that's one of those, you make your judgment and you'll be judged on it. They took the verdict first against Vince. They said not guilty. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there, representing WWE, thinking, well, what's the verdict on them? And I'm hoping, don't tell me you made some compromise verdict where you're going to let Vince off because you'll find the company guilty or something. That would be terrible.
And when it was not guilty, it was almost like, Hulk Hogan had just won a match at Madison Square Garden. It was like people just popped.
This one is my favorite one up here. The jury announces verdict. That's Linda, me, and Vince hugging. And what I always thought was interesting is the hands clapping, because that is what happened. The jury verdict was very popular.
And they really were relying on the jury to see conspiracy as an overreach by the prosecution. That's what it boiled down to with the jury, and that's what I think they deliberated over.
I'm sure that he will make it out to be one of his great triumphs in his vision of history. But all the testimony was that all the guys were on steroids. You just didn't get convicted for being part of a conspiracy. But were you built on the steroids? Were all those guys on steroids? 100% they were. If anything, all the testimony in that case proved what everyone assumed to begin with anyway.
When Vince McMahon was exonerated from this, he became even a more larger-than-life personality.
Stay tuned. This is, as we say in the World Wrestling Federation, and it could very well be that the hunters are soon will be the hunted.
What does that mean, Vince?
Stay tuned, Rosanna.
Stay tuned.
He dodged a big bullet.
So we have this celebration back at the hotel we were at. We're sitting there after, I don't know, probably too many cocktails that night at the verdict. And I said to him, hey, Vince, you can take that neck brace off. Now, kind of kidding him, And he does. He takes it off and he starts waving. But then he put it back on right afterwards. Not. I don't want you to think there was nothing wrong with his neck, because there was. It was just kind of a funny moment.
He's like, oh wait, I could lose my law license.
How would you describe you and Vince's bond?
Unbreakable. When you represent somebody in an ordeal like this, and you stay in the trenches with them, and you don't blink,
what a dork,
and you fight like hell for them, the loyalties you have to each other, they're lifelong. There's no bond that would ever break that. Period.
All right. So that was the episode on the steroid trials. We still have some folks to test. We have a whole other company of wrestlers to test. So we're going to get to the end of this television show here, and then we're gonna go do that. We're gonna go test them, see what they got. Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage is in 81. Come on, y'all. Woo! Good shit, Taker. Solid. 88 is, for a television show, that's perfect. Which is kind of crazy, because I'm booking, like, fucking full-ass main event cards. Alright. Saving. We're gonna load up our other game here. As Mr. Scott Putsky. Not everyone is on written here. Not everyone was on written at the other place, but a good percentage. This is gonna be like 50-50, so we'll see how it goes. Everything. We testing for everything. We testing everyone. Boom. Alright. Currently, we have 99 active wrestlers. See what we got. Oh, not nearly as many. Alright, let's figure it out. Art Bar, Rehab. Unhappy Art Bar. Fuck you. Pillman, Rehab. Positive, Loyalty. We love that for Pillman. We love that. Very happy. Painkiller Abuse. Candido, Rehab. Happy. RVD's even happy. Chris Colt is on hard drugs. We're going to send him to rehab. We cannot. Yeah. We'll give him a fine. Hard drug user Eddie Guerrero. Rehab. Positive impact. Very happy. We love that for Eddie Guerrero. Gary Hart, the soft drug user. We'll give him a fine. Hercules gets a fine for some steroidage. My dad is a steroid user? Dude, you're fucking retired, bro. You're 56. Fucking quit with the steroids. Hard drug user over here. Rehab. Can't send him to rehab. Sorry, New Jack. That's all. That's what you needed, bro. That's what you needed. Oh, not what I meant to do. I meant to send him to rehab. No. I had a positive impact. He's very happy. Okay. Worked out. Soft drug user. What kind of contract is he on? Okay. Fuck, I think he was a champion. I think he was like a big champion. Fucking up. Positive impact. Very happy. Thing needs rehab for sure. Positive. Tammy needs rehab, but she's not on a written contract, so she's not getting rehab. Terry Gordy gets some rehab. Wow. Warrior is only a steroid user. Fuck, X-Pac, dude. My whole cruiserweight division is fucked right now. Who's got a belt? RVD's the international cruiserweight champion. Son of a bitch. John Waltman, supposed to win. Coming up here. Well, it is what it is. We'll book around it. But yeah, that is it for the series. And the reunion show. If you stuck through all of that with us and you've watched them all back to back to back or binged it or just as they come out, we salute you, man. We can salute you. That shit's like, I don't even know how many hours that you spent with me. You basically know me at this point. Although, maybe I didn't have a whole lot of personality expressed throughout the series here, so we might be getting into kind of more grounds of me just talking and not having anything going on in the background. We might do like a special episode here where if I like buy out Vince or something, you know what I mean? I might like play the Black Saturday one in the background. But yeah, for the most part, I think, in the future I'll probably just be streaming, TW, but other games as well. But also, when I'm streaming TW, I'll probably just be giving my own commentary, kind of describing what I'm doing, talking about who I'm putting over and why, and maybe coming up with finishes. I thought about maybe, we only lost 10 guys. Maybe coming up with some finishes, talking about it like that. It's weird because the game kind of gives you a finish, even if you don't. If you think up one, the game just gives you a different one. It is what it is. Yeah, that's the series. Thanks for watching. Peace out. See you in the next one.